On July 8, 2014, a young German tourist ran through the security doors of a Bulgarian airport. His eyes were wide, his movements frantic. Within seconds, he vanished into the trees, never to be seen again. His name was Lars Mittank, healthy, happy, and on a budget vacation with friends, until something shifted. He became paranoid, afraid. He sent strange texts, refused to fly home. Then he ran. What happened to Lars? Was it a mental break, a setup, or was it something darker that no one has uncovered? This is the story of one of the internet's most chilling disappearances. Lars Joachim Mittank was born in Berlin on February 9, 1986. An only child, he spent his childhood and adolescence in Itzehoe, Germany. He worked as a precision mechanic at the Wilhelmshaven power plant from August 2007, had many friends and a girlfriend. He was an athletic boy and passionate about sports, especially football, of which he was a big fan of the Werder Bremen team. He was a simple, down-to-earth guy, with experience in hunting, diving, and exploring nature. He often went fishing with his father when he was a boy. He was also a fan of Bear Grylls, who was very popular on the internet at the time of his disappearance. He had a very good relationship with his parents. In 2012, his father suffered a stroke, so Lars often went from Wilhelmshaven, where he worked and lived, to Marne on weekends to help his mother with the housework. He was described as a normal person with no history of mental illness. On June 30, 2014, 28-year-old German Lars Mittank went on holiday with 5 friends. 2 of them, namely Paul and Tim, were his old friends and former schoolmates. The other 3 were acquaintances from Germany to the tourist resort of Golden Sands, near the city of Varna, Bulgaria. Located on the Black Sea coast, it was a popular summer destination for young Europeans, offering beach parties and Ibiza-like clubbing at a very affordable price. They booked their stay for a week at the Hotel Viva, a luxurious 4-star hotel. The first few days of their holiday were spent relaxing on the beach, swimming in the pool, and getting drunk at the club. Lars seemed relaxed and having a good time. The only abnormality his friends noticed was his poor appetite, reducing his meals to an occasional soup or salad. But this could have been due to the high temperatures. On the night of July 5th, the group of friends went to the Ministry of Cocktails bar to watch the 2014 FIFA World Cup match between the Netherlands and Costa Rica. The entire bar was decorated with flags because of the World Cup. After drinking a few beers, Lars began joking around by swapping national flags between the tables of customers. This annoyed another group of German tourists who noticed the Werder Bremen shirt that Lars was wearing, a football team he was a big fan of, and began arguing with him, as they were fans of rival team Bayern Munich. The discussion was short-lived, as Lars's friends intervened and calmed the situation before it came to blows. The evening then continued as normal. Lars and his friends were the last customers to leave the bar that night. Around 4 a.m., 2 of Lars's friends stopped at a McDonald's stand on the beach, intending to grab a bite to eat. Lars, not being hungry and generally not enjoying that type of food, stood back and waited, telling his friends that he was going to walk to the hotel on his own and they would meet up there later. However, when they arrived at the hotel, his friends discovered that he had not returned yet. Lars arrived at the hotel in the early hours of the morning, but did not speak to his friends and went to his room without saying anything. The group, after wandering the streets of Golden Sands all night, stayed at the hotel to rest until noon. A few hours later, Lars told his friends that on his way back to the hotel, he had been attacked by 2 Russian or Bulgarian men, who he thought had been paid by Bayern Munich fans, with whom he had argued the night before. To support his theory, he said that one of the German boys had told him, during the argument, that in Bulgaria, it was easy to find people willing to beat someone up for little money. His friends did not believe Lars's story, thinking that there was something strange about his behavior. Lars complained of pain in his left ear, which he said was caused by the attack. He told his girlfriend in Germany what had happened over the phone, and she advised him to see a doctor. But Lars, thinking that the pain would go away on its own, did not follow her advice and spent the whole day of July 6th quietly, buying souvenirs and postcards. On July 7th, the day the group was supposed to fly back to Germany, Lars felt worsening pain in his left ear and hearing loss. So he and a friend went to a local doctor who noticed a wound on his jaw and diagnosed a perforated eardrum, advising him not to take his flight because the pressurization of the plane could make his condition worse, and referred him to a specialist. Concerned about his job at the power plant, where he had responsibilities, and they performed regular checks that could cause problems if he suffered permanent damage, Lars considered not taking his flight back that day and staying in the hospital for a while. His friends offered to stay with him, but Lars declined and assured them that he would go back on his own, thanks to his health insurance. At 8 p.m., his friends took their plane back to Germany, and Lars was left alone in Bulgaria. At 8:40 p.m., after saying goodbye to his friends, Lars took a taxi to St. Anna Hospital in Varna. Thinking he would be hospitalized for the night, he went to the hospital's ENT specialist, Dr. Boris Naidenau, who confirmed the diagnosis of a perforated eardrum and told him that he needed surgery. Lars, however, immediately refused any type of surgery in Bulgaria. The doctor then prescribed him antibiotics, 500 milligrams of cefprozil, for the ear infection. At 9:41 p.m., upon leaving the hospital, Lars found the same taxi that had brought him there, waiting outside the building, as if the taxi driver knew he would not be hospitalized. Lars took the taxi and went to a pharmacy, but they did not have the required amount of antibiotics. He then asked the taxi driver to take him to another pharmacy, where he bought the entire pack of pills that had been prescribed to him. He then stopped at an ATM near the second pharmacy, where he withdrew 200 levs. Having bought the antibiotics, he returned to the taxi and asked the taxi driver to take him to a cheap hotel to spend the night, since he and his friends had checked out of the Hotel Viva earlier. Since it was the high summer season, almost all the hotels in Golden Sands were booked, so the taxi driver took him to the only available hotel, the Hotel Color, which was cheap and not far from the airport. At 10:10 p.m., the taxi arrived at the Hotel Color. He got out with his luggage and the antibiotics, thanked the taxi driver, and left him a generous tip. The hotel was located on a small, narrow street in one of the most run-down and dangerous areas of the city. Lars, being thirsty, thought about buying some water in a small shop opposite the hotel, but saw some shady men outside and gave up. Arriving at the reception, he checked in for the night and paid for his stay with his credit card. The receptionist later reported that Lars, from the moment he arrived, was agitated and had a clear blush on his face, so much so that she initially thought he was drunk. He asked for information about bus connections back to Germany and bought some water at the hotel's bar corner so he could swallow his pills. At 11 p.m., Lars entered his room and called his mother, Sandra, in a state of anxiety and agitation. He told her everything that had happened, from the argument with Bayern Munich fans in the bar to the attack resulting in the perforation of his left eardrum. He told her that he could not take the plane and that his friends had left for Germany, leaving him alone in Bulgaria. In a state of paranoia, he added that the doctor at the hospital had made fun of him, that he had pretended not to speak English and had refused to communicate with him, making him pay a bill of 120 elevies, or about $70, even though he had not been admitted to the hospital. He asked Sandra to contact the health insurance for foreigners so that he could be taken home on patient transport. After Sandra called the health insurance, she called Lars back and informed him. Lars told his mother that there was something weird about the hotel and that he didn't feel safe, adding that the receptionist had done something unusual with his credit card, and thinking that she had cloned it with shady intentions. He asked his mother to block it, to reactivate it once he returned to Germany, assuring him that it wouldn't be a problem because he still had enough cash with him. Sandra immediately called a bank assistant, who informed her that once the credit card was blocked, it would no longer be possible to reactivate it. So she called Lars again, who told her to block it anyway. Increasingly paranoid, he said he was afraid that someone wanted to rob him or kill him, and that he would leave the hotel. Sandra blocked his credit card and, worried about her son, booked him a return flight to Germany from Varna at 4:20 p.m. the next day, and in case they didn't let him fly, just to be safe, she also bought him a bus ticket that would leave at 11:30 p.m. and would take him to Hamburg. She then told her son to rest and get some energy, because the next few days would be tiring. Lars told her again that he would leave the hotel, in a low tone, because he thought someone was listening, and the call ended. Lars had brought his old mobile phone with him for that holiday in Bulgaria, with which he could only make calls and send text messages, leaving his new smartphone at home in Germany to avoid breaking it and to enjoy the holiday without distractions. Therefore, he had no access to the internet. At 1 a.m., Lars took all his luggage and left the hotel. It is unknown where he went during this time or what he did. At 2:30 a.m., Lars called his mother again, this time in a very low voice, in terror. He whispered in fear that he had left the hotel and 4 men were following him. He told her that he was hiding somewhere high up and was afraid of falling and being discovered. He then hung up the phone. At 3:06, Lars sent a text message to his mother that said, "Sefzil 500, what is it?" At 3:15, he sent another text message, which said the same thing. What is Sefzil 500? These were the antibiotics that his doctor had prescribed him. Lars seemed to be having doubts about the pills he was taking. Since Sandra thought he was hiding, she did not call him back for fear that the ringing of his cell phone would reveal him to the men who were chasing him. She spent the entire night awake in front of her cell phone, waiting for Lars to call her back. At 5 o'clock in the morning, Lars was seen by a taxi driver panicking on the side of a road near the beach Cuba bar. Even though he already had a passenger, a Bulgarian social worker, the taxi driver chose to take him in his taxi anyway, given his urgency to be picked up. Both the taxi driver and the passenger stated that Lars appeared terrified and that both of his pupils were fully dilated. At 6 o'clock in the morning, the taxi arrived at Varna Airport. Lars got out with all his luggage and called his mother, telling her with relief that he had arrived at the airport, reducing the conversation to a minimum because he had little battery left. He told her that he had run out of money, but since his credit card was blocked, he had asked a German man at the airport for information, who told him about Western Union. Lars, who had not previously known about this system for sending money, explained to his mother in detail how it worked and asked her to send him some money, without specifying a specific amount. He told her that he was covered in dirt from having been in that hiding place to escape the 4 men who had chased him during the night, and his mother advised him to go to the bathroom and rinse off. Sandra then gave Lars the details of the plane ticket and bus she had booked for him, asking him to write them down somewhere in case his phone ran out of battery. Lars replied that they would not let him take the plane or the bus. Sandra advised him to consult the airport doctor after rinsing, to be sure he could take his return flight, and encouraged him that his ear could not be in such bad condition, because otherwise the hospital doctor would not send him away. The phone call ended, and Sandra decided to send him 500 euros, or about $580, via Western Union. She tried to call him to warn him. The call opened, but Sandra could only hear a background hiss, as if the call had been opened by mistake, and Lars had his cell phone in his pocket while he was rinsing in the bathroom. Then Sandra ended the call. It would be the last time Lars would answer the phone. His mother would try to contact him many more times, without ever getting an answer. The visit to the doctor lasted 42 minutes. Dr. Kostov took all the necessary information from his passport, checked his ear, gave him drops, measured his body temperature at 37.2 degrees Celsius, about 99 degrees Fahrenheit, and tried to give him tablets. But Lars refused them, probably because of the bad experience he had with Kefsil 500. The doctor at the airport told Lars that he could take his plane back to Germany, because the situation with the perforated eardrum was not that serious. But he had to sign a document stating that he would take full responsibility for any future ear problems caused by the pressurization of the plane. So, he gave him the document, and Lars signed it. Dr. Kostov described Lars as having an anxious and restless attitude. He said that he seemed very insecure and said that he looked like someone who had not slept for a while. Suddenly, Lars stood up and ran out of the doctor's office, leaving behind all his belongings, including his cell phone, passport, wallet, and identification documents. According to the doctor's testimony, Lars ran out of the room after a third, still unidentified individual entered the room. When investigators asked the doctor about this man, he changed his story 3 times, as if he did not want to reveal his true identity. This has raised many doubts about the lack of attention that Bulgarian investigators paid to this case. At 10:08 a.m., airport surveillance cameras captured Lars, running from the terminal, slowing down as he exited the building, walking around the airport, as if to avoid attracting police attention, and speeding up again as he drove away. Witnesses reported seeing him climb over a barbed wire fence and disappear into a field of 6-foot-high sunflowers near a highway. From that moment on, Lars Mittank disappeared into thin air. No one ever saw or heard from him again. Three months after his disappearance, in October 2014, a Bulgarian prostitute with her little daughter reported seeing Lars walking along a country road towards Slanchevo in Aksakovo municipality, hiding behind bushes as cars passed by. The prostitute offered him sexual intercourse in exchange for money, but the alleged Lars refused and told her that he lived in a large hotel in the nearest village. There is no hotel in Slanchevo, and no locals reported seeing him there. Lars's family is convinced it was him because the prostitute reported a specific characteristic of Lars that was never revealed to the public of her own free will, without being asked. This was told by the private investigator who worked on this case. 2015. A year after his disappearance, a truck driver claimed to have seen him hitchhiking in Varna. The veracity of this claim has not been confirmed. 2018. In September 2018, the Italian TV show Chi l'ha visto aired a 5-minute report in which they said that some witnesses at a McDonald's in Turin, in Collegno to be precise, had seen Lars. The subject appeared thin, with a beard and long hair, and a German speech mixed with Italian. Later, Lars's mother, comparing the images that were given to her of the alleged sighting, stated that it was not him. 2019. A German truck driver gave a hitchhiker a lift from Dresden to Schildow, Germany. The man learned about the disappearance case sometime later and said that the hitchhiker resembled a disfigured version of Lars. The truck driver reported that he had long hair and an unkempt beard. CCTV hotel story. Lars hiding in elevator, pacing up and down the stairs. This never happened. According to the receptionist, Lars stayed only 3 hours in the hotel and never left his room. No hotel CCTV ever existed. The hotel didn't have any, or weren't in operation at the time. However, no CCTV ever existed apart from the famous airport footage. Ask the FB page, Find It Lars Mittank, run by Lars's family, and they will confirm all this. It seems the fake news were inspired by the Elisa Lam case here to invent their bullshit and attract likes and shares. Bulgaria was Lars' first trip outside Germany. This is false. Lars was an experienced traveler, but he preferred nature or sports-related trips. For example, the photo of him at the lake was taken in Norway at the Fjord Voyage. He has also been in Turkey and Egypt. In a photo where he is holding a Kinder chocolate box, you can see a beach umbrella behind him, with some writing in Arabic. The one in Bulgaria was simply his first disco and beach parties-like trip, that he didn't like that much. In fact, he initially refused, but then a friend of theirs had to give up, and Lars took his place, being on work holidays at that time. Lars entered a vast and wild forest and disappeared. It is confirmed that after climbing over the barbed wire fence and entered the sunflower field, Lars passed that field and reached the A2 highway. We know this thanks to the molecular dogs that followed his tracks, that disappeared somewhere on the highway, and from a couple of motorists who saw Lars walking on the side that morning, thinking he was a drunk German tourist who was walking home from a party without any luggage. This was confirmed by Sandra, Lars's mother, on a German TV show last year. There is no vast and wild forest he entered like news said. He passed a small field and reached the highway on foot. Lars was hit in the ear during a bar fight. He never got into any bar fights. He just had a short verbal discussion with some German tourists who were Bayern fans at the bar while watching the 2014 World Cup match Costa Rica, Netherlands at approximately 11 p.m. on July 5th, which was calmed down almost immediately. After Paul and Tim stopped at the McDonald's kiosk, Lars disappeared for a while and was allegedly attacked while alone. But no one actually saw these men beat Lars. There are no witnesses. We don't know what really happened, even though Lars had a perforated left eardrum anyway. Lars Mittank vanished in broad daylight. No blood, no body, no confirmed sightings. Just over a minute of CCTV footage, a terrified sprint out of an airport clinic across a field of sunflowers. And then, nothing. His backpack, phone, passport, all left behind. His last known location, the edge of a highway near Varna, Bulgaria. Was it paranoia, a mental health crisis, or was someone chasing him, just out of frame? It's been over a decade, and the questions only grow darker. But one thing is certain, Lars didn't just disappear. He was running from something, or someone. If you have a theory, drop it in the comments. The more we talk about Lars, the harder it is for his story to fade away. For more unsolved disappearances and stories that deserve answers, subscribe to the Asylum True Crime. And as always, stay curious and stay safe.